Hi everyone, welcome to our presentation. Today we will be discussing the influence of social media on adolescents. My name is Daljit.
I'm Dasi.
I'm Eliza.
I'm Nidhi.
I'm Nora.
My name's Olivia.
And I am Zakir.
To start off, we have this question: how does social media influence you? The next slide by Nora and Dasi will provide an overview of this topic.
What is social media and why is this so important to us? Social media is the general term for websites and apps that promote social interaction virtually and allows us to share news and provide content for others to see.
97% of teens use some kind of social media platform. Majority of teens say there's some kind of positive aspect. They often turn to social media when they're going through tough times, using it to connect with people and also using it to show the world who they are. But there are a number of challenges. Suicide has become the second most common cause of death for Canadian youth. The percentage of teenagers reporting spending 5 or more hours a day on social media nearly doubled. They are feeling as if they have to present themselves in a certain way. They feel pressure to post things that will get a lot of likes. Even though Instagram has recently experimented with getting rid of displaying how many likes a post have, there is still a basic structure built into these apps that seem to run on attention. It seems what social media does is to intensify existing social problems by creating a powder keg in which they get worse. For example, Wall Street Journal revealed that Instagram contributed to young girls feeling worse about their bodies. Nearly a third of girls stated that when they felt bad about themselves, Instagram made it worse. Girls and young women tend to spend more time on social media than boys do, have more exposure to cyberbullying, and show tendency to experience more mental health effects. There are 3 common stresses caused by social media that affect our youth. The first one being insecurity.
Many people often compare themselves to what celebrities share on social media. Instagram has made it so you have access to people's lives without truly seeing it for what it is. A lot of young girls also compare themselves to other women who have desirable bodies, which a lot of women achieve through plastic surgery but portray as a result of exercise.
The second one being social currency. Likes, shares, and comments are the social currency, and we are the product. When we post and get likes, it becomes a recorded transaction. Majority of you may be guilty of taking down a post because it didn't get as many likes as you thought you would. This is considered an epidemic. We are tying up our self-worth with what others think of us and then quantifying it for everyone else to see. The last one is fear of missing out. When we don't have access to social media and our phones, this quickly turns into a social anxiety that causes irrational withdrawal symptoms.
This is also because social media has become our primary method of maintaining contact with people and keeping up with current events. When this is restricted, it causes panic because social media, up until a certain point, is an extension of our real lives that we can access virtually.
But what makes us addicted to social media? It is a psychological addiction as opposed to a substance addiction. There's a clear degradation of white matter in the regions that control emotional processing, attention, and decision making. Because social media provides immediate rewards with very little effort required, your brain begins to rewire itself, making you desire these stimulations. And you begin to crave more of this neurological excitement after each interaction. Sounds like a drug, right? Like when your phone buzzes during the middle of productive work. Wait, did that even buzz? This is termed phantom vibration syndrome, which is a psychological phenomenon where you think you felt your phone go off, but it didn't. It seems that our brain perceives an itch as an actual vibration from our phone.
Dopamine, also known as the feel-good neurotransmitter, is commonly associated with pleasure and reward. When you engage in an act that brings you a form of pleasure, dopamine gets released. These acts can range from food, sex, drugs, gambling, and now social media.
During adolescent development, however, because this reward pathway tends to develop much earlier than the rational regions of the brain, we see a quick and consistent activation of dopamine and pleasure in teens, which leads to addiction. Teenagers get a rush of excitement when someone likes their posts, and a sense of disappointment when an individual ignores them. In this presentation, we will go more in depth of the effects social media has on adolescents, and what can our youth today do to promote good social media use.
As we all know, social media has its pros and cons. The next 2 slides will discuss both the positive and risk factors of social media on adolescents. These were some of the positive factors observed from social media. Users can connect with one another through social media. Adolescents can communicate with their families and friends. they can still contact them even if they are geographically separated. Social media also allows one to make new friends at school or with people who share similar interests. Sharing similar interests with people can develop a sense of community. Maintaining connections with certain people can also provide social support. Adolescents can seek advice or communicate with others about their concerns. Affect-enhancing content can be found within social media, such as humorous or invigorating posts. Such posts can help one feel better. They also have the ability to be exposed to inspiring or uplifting content. Some of this content can provide useful tips for one's personal life, whether it's in terms of their health and wellness or academics. Other than these positive factors, social media does come with some risks. Constant use of social media can lead to addiction by evidently increasing its usage. As a result of this increased usage, the individual becomes disengaged from certain beneficial activities such as sleeping, exercising, and doing homework. This can also lead to a disconnection from one's social network, such as fewer interactions with family and friends. Through social media, one can come across graphic content, exposure to violent videos and images, media encouraging self-injury, risky and dangerous behaviors are amongst them. Encouragement to use or engage in certain intoxicants or unhealthy behaviors such as drug use is an example. Adolescents may develop unrealistic expectations as a result of exposure to idealistic content. Celebrities are among the many social media users who flaunt materialistic content such as expensive clothing and cars. In order to gain social acceptance, one may believe that they must engage in certain activities as mentioned before, possess certain materialistic items, or present themselves in a certain manner. When attempting to achieve an unrealistic appearance, unhealthy comparisons are made when such expectations are not met. This can make one feel excluded because they are not part of the mainstream look or crowd. This is intensified when certain people within a social group have the ability to acquire such things. Failure to meet expectations can lead to disconnection from these social groups, such as friends. In relation to this, adolescents may become pressurized to meet certain statistics on social media. The pressure to gain a certain number of followers, likes, or comments is an example of this, as mentioned before. In the world of social media, these factors play a large role in one's popularity. Having a small number of likes, comments, or followers can give the impression of being unpopular. Social media is made up of a diverse range of users and is frequently unregulated. Certain adolescents may experience cyberbullying by their peers or strangers. They may be subjected to hurtful remarks or negative criticism. This can be about themselves as a result of their appearance or because they were singled out at random. In addition, because so many people use social media, adolescents run the risk of interacting with strangers or making plans to meet them. Before considering the use of social media, individuals, especially adolescents, should be mindful of both positive and risk factors of its use.
Olivia and I will now be discussing the effects and influence of social media.
Now we're going to move on to the effects of social media on a student's learning. Nowadays, it has become a habit for an adolescent or a secondary student to spend way too much time on social media or social networking sites chatting with friends rather than focusing on studying. Social media is a powerful distraction which lowers performance in terms of academic activities and can result in poor grades with the extensive use of social media. Students these days are depending much more on such platform to gain information and knowledge rather than looking at their textbooks, journals, or even notes. As it is easy to extract information online, reading habits of a student along with their learning and research capabilities are reducing. Social media also encourages the usage of terrible language, such as the use of slang or even short form words. Their writing skills as well as communication skills are being affected as they attempt to multitask while studying. Students put more emphasis on availability of information online because it's easier, and learning as well as knowledge they get is not retained. Students rely a lot on spell checks, so their spelling and grammar is influenced in a negative way because they rely a lot on that. Social media affects students' learning because it leads to wastage of time and capable of submitting their work in the specified time frame because they're more focused on their social media platforms. It also reduces learning and research capabilities. Finally, I will be discussing the issues of social media affecting an adolescent's brain development. It can have an adverse effect on students' minds. They may also be exposed to bad posture, eye strain, as well as physical and mental stress. Too much usage can trigger their minds to feeling of not belonging, ostracism, lack of a sense of control, and lack of self-esteem. Adolescents do experience lack of concentration, attention, and also lack of being able to multitask. Excessive usage of social media can cause phantom vibration, which is a syndrome whereby the person has a perception that their phone is ringing or vibrating, but it is not. Also, social media usage at an early stage in their early lives can worsen their performance when it comes to cognitive testing or cognitive performance. Lastly, it can possibly shrink the part of their brain whereby it helps maintain attention span. Symptoms related to overuse of social media in adolescents. They include cognitive symptoms such as inability to concentrate, trouble sleeping, and anxiousness. There's emotional symptoms which include depression, low self-esteem, and worthlessness. Behavioral symptoms, which includes sleeping too much or having insomnia, so not sleeping enough, social withdrawal or isolation. And lastly, physical symptoms, which includes weakness, fatigue, or muscle tension.
Hi, this is Daljit, and I will now be talking about the effect of social media on mental health. Social media has a significant impact on one's mental health and psychological well-being. It can lead to negative mental health outcomes such as loneliness, decreased empathy, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, and depression. Furthermore, many people use social media to share photos and videos, and this intimate feature exposes young people to visual representations of others, including friends, family members, celebrities, and even strangers. They then compare themselves to idealistic and filtered images, and as mentioned before, this leads to unrealistic expectations of themselves and negative self-evaluations. When these expectations are not met, the individual becomes stressed and dissatisfied with his or her appearance. I will now be briefly talking about social media use statistics among adolescents. 99.6% of people have used internet in the previous 3 months. 92.2% of people regularly use social media on a daily basis. 53.5% of people use 3 or more social media apps or websites, and the average number of social media apps or websites used is 2.6. Furthermore, 47% of people report less sleep. 36.1% of people report trouble concentrating. 29.5% of people report having less physical activity. 22.8% of people report feeling anxious or depressed. 18.3% of people report feeling envious. 17.7% of people report feeling frustrated or angry. And among the population of social media users, those in younger age groups tend to use more social media accounts than those in older age groups. Rejection sensitivity is characterized by anxious concerns about being rejected based on one's physical attractiveness. Social media creates a climate of social comparison and preoccupation with appearance, which can lead to a variety of emotional problems. Social media causes adolescents to make appearance-based comparisons with others. People with high appearance-based rejection sensitivity were also more likely than those with low appearance-based rejection sensitivity to compare their physical attractiveness with others. This results in teens becoming more sensitive to other people's appearance feedback and judgments, and thus may experience low self-esteem. Furthermore, this may lead to the development of behavior responses such as excessive dieting, compulsive exercising, binge eating, and constantly comparing one's attractiveness to others. Sometimes people may engage in such behaviors because they're afraid of being rejected by others if they do not look a certain way. As a result, they are constantly monitoring others' responses to their self-taken images, such as selfies. As Robert Harjevic said, being overly sensitive to rejection can become a destructive virus, and that is exactly what social media is causing. Social media is being excessively used by adolescents, and as a result of the excess use, it is triggering psychological dependence, and teens are now becoming increasingly stressed as a result of their inability or difficulty breaking the social media habit. As a consequence, they were displaying addiction-like symptoms. Some addiction-like symptoms that are present with social media use include preoccupation, which is the excessive use of social media is causing one to constantly think about what's going on in social media apps and their constant desire to be updated on what the latest social media trends are. Tolerance. Adolescents having a desire to spend more and more time on social media. Withdrawal. So feeling bad when offline with intense feelings of boredom and increased urge to use social media. Currently, we can also see many users experiencing separation anxiety when they're denied access to their devices for as little as 10 to 20 minutes. Persistence, so being unable to reduce time spent on social media. Escape. Social media is increasingly being used to help cope and escape from negative feelings, loneliness, and boredom. Problems. There are more arguments with others due to social media. Deception. People are lying about the time they spend on social media. Displacement. The excessive use of social media is causing one to neglect other activities, such as physical activity. Conflict. Social media can lead to more fights with family and friends. The excessive use of social media can also reduce the interaction between siblings, couples, friends, or parent and child. This leads to a lack of interpersonal relationship skills, communication skills, and reduced bonding, and increases opportunities for misunderstandings. Furthermore, there is constant conflict between parents and adolescents over their lack of social skills. In today's world, anxiety is one of the most common and basic mental health problems. Social media limits face-to-face social communication, which leads to poor communication skills in person. As a result, the individual faces heightened anxiety when having to interact with individuals in person due to teens being so used to texting and communicating via text. People who spend more time on social media have less time for face-to-face interactions, and social interaction is proven to be effective against mental disorders. Anxiety is aggravated further by teens' inability to respond to difficult messages. For example, if two people are having a conversation on Instagram, one of them will constantly consider what to say to the other person in order to remain liked. This can result in texting anxiety. Anxiety may also be caused by fear of displaying unpleasant or boring social media content on their social media apps. Social media users, for example, may associate likes and comments with high-quality content. As a result, when a user posts a picture, for example, on social media and does not receive the number of likes and comments expected, it can cause additional anxiety. Anxiety can also be caused by fear of loss. For example, they are constantly checking their friends' messages and trying to respond as frequently as they can because they want to be liked by their friends. Lastly, anxiety may also be caused due to the increased pressure to have perfect photos and well-written posts. I will now be talking about perfectionist self-presentation on social media. Many young people have the need to publicly portray a perfect body image to others. This often involves them concealing body imperfections through filters or other apps. There is also increased level of anxiety and stress over selecting the best selfie to post, which teens then have a need to further manipulate and digitally alter to make sure they are picture perfect. Teens see themselves constantly and physically improved when using a filter, and as mentioned before, this leads to unhealthy and unrealistic expectations. Adolescents high in perfectionistic self-presentation reported higher levels of worry, anxiety, and depression compared to adolescents low in perfectionistic self-presentation. Teens easily feel insecure because of the filtered and photoshopped content that they get exposed to on a daily basis, which leads to a negative self-esteem. Furthermore, with increased use of filters and airbrushing on social media, it becomes extremely concerning to think whether teens would ever be able to grow up with realistic images of what beauty truly is. Now, just take a few minutes to ask yourself, is social media impacting your health? Ask yourself, do you find yourself distracted on social media at work or school? Do you find that you're often comparing yourself to others on social media? Is your sleep being disturbed because you're spending too much time scrolling on social media? Do you feel anxious, lonely, or sad after using social media? And do you tend to put yourself down after viewing others' pictures or videos on social media apps?
So, as we are all future nurses, let's take a deep dive into how nurses can advocate or intervene for adolescents.
We have decided that it would be best to implement a framework where it involves primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention interventions, though best practice states that interventions on the primary and secondary levels are the most effective in reducing rates of cyberbullying. Let's begin with the primary interventions.
Firstly, it is essential to start conversations and get involved in social media where it is ideal to know the lingo pertaining to social media. Using this will allow nurses to facilitate productive, credible conversations with students, such as working with students to learn how to use popular social media apps, including Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Tinder. Let's connect this to the CNO competencies based on the communicator, where utilizing 3.6 uses information and communication technologies like ICTs to support communication, and 3.7 communicates effectively in complex and rapidly changing situations.
This chart gives a great summary of the purpose of each media, age group, most frequent users, how to access it, and gives advice on parental controls. Incorporating this chart into your practice when it comes to nurses trying to build trust and initiate open dialogue with parents or students can allow further discussion to happen, and more information regarding each social media can be utilized. This will allow both parents, nurses, and students to, keep up to date on the trending social media. Connections to the CNO competencies in the professional category is specifically in relation to 2.8, which demonstrates professional judgment to ensure social media and communication and technologies are used in a way that maintains public trust in the profession. 2.6 establish and maintains professional boundaries with clients and the healthcare team.
Education and intervention efforts should begin before middle school, as the research reveals that middle school students experience greater cyberbullying and face-to-face bullying than high school students. Therefore, we as nurses need to work with other school personnel and student advocacy groups in order to determine the use of various social media sites and to create a school climate and culture where students feel comfortable reporting cyberbullying. Furthermore, school nurses should also serve as a resource for students who need to report an incident of bullying. Additionally, it is ideal to develop peer mentoring programs where we would implement to have student leaders advise and counsel other students on issues. Research has shown that peer mentoring programs reduce traditional bullying and interpersonal conflicts in schools. A great intervention would be to hold seminars for parents and students separately and together. In relation to CNO Collaborator, 4.5 contributes to healthcare team functioning by applying group communication theory, principles, and group process skills would be a great competency for nurses to apply. We should recommend the school admin to provide training to all school staff to develop awareness and strategize prevention, identification, and intervention strategies, because most bullying takes place during unstructured activities within school personnel, including bus drivers, cafeteria workers, and etc. They should receive training in addition to teachers. Using competency 6.2, 6.4, and 6.11 from the section of CNO, the leader would create a positive behavior change, where 6.2 integrates continuous quality improvement principles and activities into nursing practice. 6.4 participates in creating and maintaining a healthy, respectful, and psychologically safe workplace. Finally, 6.11 adapts practice to meet client care needs within a continually changing healthcare system.
To address knowledge disparities and ensure both parents and students know how to properly utilize social media and understand the definition and effects of cyberbullying. So to do this, school nurses can give out information on available electronic resources that is available out there. Let's connect this to CNO competencies in terms of the clinician, where 1.2 states that we need to conduct a holistic nursing assessment to collect comprehensive information on client health status. 1.12 states that to implement evidence-informed practice for infection prevention and control. 1.17 to incorporate knowledge from nursing science, social science, humanities, and health-related research into plans of care. These competencies will create an effective nursing intervention.
Moving on to the next step of the framework, secondary preventive intervention. In this step, a nursing intervention that would need to be implemented is to increase student awareness of incident reporting and the investigation process, so we can help students feel comfortable to come forward and report cyberbullying without fear of getting in trouble. It is important for school nurses to avoid scare tactics when talking to students about social media. It is very important to involve parents if students are showing signs and symptoms associated with cyberbullying, to aid in providing quicker interventions, which is more likely to result in positive resolution. Connecting it to CNO Educator Competency 8.5 states that assists clients to access, review, and evaluate information, retrieve using information and communication technologies, which would be ideal for the nurse to implement.
Finally, the last part of the framework, tertiary preventative intervention. Let's hope that a student doesn't reach this far, but in rare cases there are a couple of interventions that nurses can utilize to help such students. So in this case, we would help them find long-term mental health care to provide long-term care and solutions to continued cyberbullying. We assist students to attend a different school if deemed necessary. In some cases, if a school cannot provide adequate resources to resolve the bullying, changing the school may be a viable option. In other words, assist students with the reintegration process if they require long-term mental health treatment or an inpatient psychiatric hospitalization. The goal is to ensure a successful transition back to the school and to establish rapport with the individual student.
Through research, a tool that a nurse can utilize is the Social Media Assessment Package, also known as SMAP. Family nurses can use the proposed SMAP to gain an initial picture of usage patterns within a family, as well as identify and support positive future social media choices. Nurse practitioners may also use the SMAP in a personal evaluation of their practice as a means to maximize social media use and ongoing professional development. The goal of a family systems approach is to create a balance between change and stability. Families are in constant states of flux, operating in environments where they are adapting to change and creating stability. The SMAP also builds on a recent integrative review of family systems nursing interventions. Key themes included strengthening family adherence, supporting and caring more for each other, and increasing quality of family communications, thereby promoting healthier behaviors of individual family members. Adopting a family systems perspective in the development of tools and interventions is well supported by previous research to enhance the effectiveness, quality, and adaptability of an intervention. This is a sample social media individual assessment survey where evidence-based information and positive communication from reliable healthcare providers are established to support a change in family dialogue and decision-making. Conducting a social media assessment as a regular part of a family nursing practice could highlight existing delivery of misinformation through social media channels.
What's great about this social media intervention matrix is that it identifies features available on a variety of social media platforms that connect them to reliable information and or strengthen group communication patterns, as opposed to waiting for negative consequences of use to arise. There are many potential benefits to the family using the social media. It can open up new communication channels for family members, especially those separated by distance. Just a quick summary of how it is essential to incorporate into practice, as it gives a clear idea of which social media tools to utilize for high usage or low usage.
The importance of social learning theory in social media cannot be overlooked, especially with the explosion of social media platforms during the past decade. Initially, the media could only reach adolescent minds through television, newspapers, or radio, influencing their social learning capacities. However, with the invention of the internet and fast broadband into our lives, the importance of social learning theory in social media has risen to the point where its effect cannot be controlled. Individuals imitate others on social media all the time, whether they are performing a movie scene, mimicking dancing steps from a music video, or attempting one of the many social media challenges. This kind of activity is usually motivated by a desire to be socially accepted or liked. One of the key characteristics of social learning theory is its adaptability in explaining variances in a person's behavior or learning. For example, as a person's environment changes, so does the person's behavior. An advantage of the social learning theory is that it allows for several modes of learning. A person might learn through direct encounters or through observation. For example, social learning theory is applied when an individual searches on Facebook for old acquaintances. As educators, we must evaluate various learning materials for social messages and attempt to influence the individual's self-regulation. This will allow the educator to dive deeper into the individual's personality and motivation by listening and posing questions to stimulate conscious awareness, insight, and ego strength.
The importance of a humanistic learning theory in social media is quite influential in terms of the perspective of an individual user. The media or video or image that pops up on their feed is based on the individual's user's interest. And that's how most social media brands market to cater to individuals' wants, needs, or likes and dislikes. And with these interventions described, it is our goal to educate adolescents to make wise choices and also to check the capacity whether they can make wise choices or not. In case there are some viral videos out there that portray negative information, we want to ensure that, hey, you don't want to listen to them because they are going to influence you in the wrong direction. So we want to make sure as nurses we look out for them in that aspect. And as well as educating the parents regarding that there's negative information out there on social media that could spread. So as educators, we must encourage self-growth, listen empathetically, allow freedom of choice, and respect learners through various learning forms, either through VAR or Kolb's learning theory. And every individual is different, so we don't want to make an assumption or judgment of any sort to potentially harm the relationship that we have created with the student or parent. Needless to say, if a famous influencer or viral marketing ad regarding this topic is portrayed in a spontaneous, playful, and creative way, it can allow adolescents to internalize their feelings about themselves. Not only that, it will give them a clear vision of some sort that have a more sense of direction of what to follow and what to not follow. This will allow active listening to actualize the potential for positive self-growth and confirm self-actualization.
Well, that wraps it up. Thank you for listening to our presentation. Please see our discussion questions under week 9. But wait, there's more. Our group has decided to do a poster. This will be available to download in the forum.